So one should never sort of get ahead of themselves, but there is promise. I do want to address the issue of the president's statements and the apparent flip-flopping and how the media and how the analytical community perceives it. See, the journalist community and the analyst community is used to a certain rhythm. This president is not your typical president. He is, such presidents come, after many decades. There's a sort of a cyclical history in the United States. If you go back, one can go back to FDR in the 30s and how he was a wrecking ball to the system at the time. So I think we're not getting past that. And then there's the politics of it as well, the partisanship. And so things get lost. Unpredictability is seen by the president and his team as a virtue. And so I think there is a strategy. I think obviously when you're trying to do away, in this case, a long-standing US view of Pakistan as, for a lack of better term, a negative actor in the context of the war in Afghanistan and so on and so forth. And of course, the relationship with India that is being changed. And so it requires, out of the box approach. It requires him to not do the kind of things that his predecessors have done because they were following a particular script of a particular era. He's rewriting the script. And so what he's doing is it's natural for him to come and say, well, let's try this, let's try that. And if this isn't working, nobody has, in other words, there isn't a script to go by. You're making it as you go along. And so I think that that has to be kept in mind. But to answer your question, look, there's promise. I was just going over the award, the I think it's the Nishani-Imtiaz Award that General Michael Kurilla, the head of Central Command, received from Pakistan today. That's huge. American military leaders do not go and accept offers from countries just like that. There's an entire protocol. In the case of Pakistan and the legacy of the last 20 years, this is quite a change. And this isn't being done casually. So there is, and then we have, Pakistan aligning on Central Asia militarily. We had that event take place in Islamabad. So I think there is a lot going on here that is being missed in sort of, how we read what's in the media and how it's superficially being processed. Yeah, I don't know if the United States or ever thought that way. I do think that see, you have to look at it from the American point of view. From the American point of view, what was going on over the last generation? There was a war against terrorism that was writ large. That was the thing. But the US and its allies were involved in Afghanistan. Uh, Pakistan, Afghanistan, and that whole broader, India-Pakistan border was also, these were epicenters or fault lines of terrorism. And so there was a particular view that Pakistan is a troubled state, India is a promising state, and that was a view. Views are not static. Views change as realities shift. The reality has shifted. There was, at one point, not too long ago, the United States says, we're done. We're pulling out. Taliban, you can have it. Okay. And so they pulled out, meaning that it wasn't a priority for American foreign policy anymore. And there were other bigger issues to deal with. And so that moment has passed. So this administration is taking a fresh look at everything and saying, okay, how do we get allies? How do we deal with this complicated world and without having a heavy footprint? We don't want to send tens of thousands of troops to different areas. Our strategy is to rely on local stakeholders. And that stakeholder in a region like South Asia, which is connected to Middle East and Central Asia, literally organically, you can't say, I'm just going to work with India and I'm going to forget everybody else. Okay. And then Indian capabilities. Yes, there was the Indo-Pacific, and that's still a strategy. The United States does still sees India as a strategic partner at a higher level than it sees Pakistan because of the literal variance in capability between the two countries. But that said, the Americans know that in that sort of competition with China, India has a long time, it needs a long time to take off because militarily, it does not have that power projection capability in the maritime space. From a pure economic point of view, India is not about to take out a big bite out of the manufacturing prowess that China dominates right now. That will take time. So in the meantime, what does the US do? The US comes up with different, strategies, looks at different allies, and looks at Pakistan, which has been an ally of the United States for many, many years in the past, is still very close to the United States. And I'm not talking counterterrorism. I'm talking more broader strategic stuff. Especially, I mean, this isn't just about counterterrorism when we say, hey, we're going to work together on Central Asia, or we're going to I mean, there's coordination on what is happening in Iran. There is this broader conversation of Middle East in which Pakistan is being pulled into. So yeah, I mean, this isn't a work in isolation. So I really see that this whole situation has shifted. Whereas in India, I think that they're still not coming to terms with this shift. I think that the Indian government, this current government, is slow to respond to that shift. Look, I think the United States appreciates that there is a relationship between China and Pakistan. And th this administration in particular uh, does not want to engage in something in a foreign policy venture that does not make sense. So is it the US trying to pull Pakistan away from China? Maybe as a tactic, maybe at a tactical level. But does the United States want that kind of responsibility? No. The United States has certain goals. If you look at how this administration is dealing with China, I mean, we're having another round of conversation between the Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and his staff and their Chinese counterparts in Stockholm on Monday and Tuesday on the trade talks. This isn't your classic, adversarial kind of relationship. It's a very complicated relationship. The economies of the two major powers of the world are integrated in a complicated way. And so you have to work with that. So same thing here. If America understands its own complicated relationship with China, it certainly realizes that Pakistan, being a neighbor of China, being a recipient of Chinese assistance, being a Chinese ally for so long, isn't about to, just sort of say, okay, bye-bye China and hello US. That's not happening. And that's not what the US wants either. The US is interested in a relationship with Pakistan that serves its interests. And I have said this on record before. I don't think Pakistan is doing anything in particular with China that the Americans see as absolutely detrimental to their interests. I just don't see that. I think Pakistani, relations with China are not at that level. I mean, it's not that the Chinese are relying on Pakistan for something very critical. It's the other way around. And so Pakistan's needs are being, served by that relationship with China. Clearly, America does not want to go back to the old days of doling out, billions of dollars in aid. It wants a business relationship. It wants a natural trade relationship. And that's where we're headed. That's a great question. And that is the challenge for Pakistan. That actually is a challenge for the United States. The United States wants Pakistan as an ally, differently from how it has its own relationship with India, but you can't have these universes in isolation. They're not separate universes. This is one universe. So how do you square that circle? That's important for the United States. But the United States realizes its limitations, and this president, as I said earlier, is willing to facilitate, is willing to mediate, is willing to play not the lead role, but a supporting role. The heavy lifting has to be done by the players in the region, in the different region. And this isn't just South Asia. You see this in Europe with Ukraine. You see this in the Middle East. You see this in East Asia, and it's a global strategy. So Pakistan has to find a way to connect with this. Now, obviously, if Pakistan cannot get India to bilaterally agree, then obviously somebody else has to come in, and that somebody else is going to be the United States. But that doesn't mean the United States, all the United States will do is say, hey, you need to talk. Okay. You need to establish some sort of a mechanism. We're not here to force anybody. We're not here to try to solve the Kashmir issue. None of that. Those are your issues. You have to solve them. All we can do is encourage you, incentivize you. And I think that that's what's going to happen. But ultimately, the Indians will have to come around. I mean, the Indians will have to come around. The Pakistanis will have to come around. There are certain Indian demands, there are certain Pakistani demands. They're going to have to find that equilibrium, and it's going to take time.